this here is a GTX 970 MSI Gaming X. This is a 4 gig graphics card, and I absolutely love this shroud. I think it looks really nice, and it's quite big. It's a two slot PCI slot card, and it has a decent input there. You know, the I/O. It's got a display port, and HDMI, and two DVIs. So that's relatively modern. And then as for the shroud itself, it's got that red and black MSI classic look to it, and I think it looks really nice. So this card is going to be tested today in the same way that I did last week, using the test bench behind me there, and basically just going to see if the card is still worthy of being used in 2024 and what the value is with this card. Now, of course, a GTX 970 is a lot more powerful, modern, and better than a GTX 750 Ti. So it's not a comparison between the two cards. It's just, again, trying to see if this card is valid in 2024. The test bench is the same as it was last week. It is a 4th gen i5, 4560 or 70, I think. 8 gigs of RAM, a 2 terabyte hard drive, a 128 SSD, and I think it's a different power supply. It's just a 500 watt power supply from Antec. So yeah, just a little test bench set up there, and this is going to go in that, and we are going to test some games, the same games that I tested last week at HD. I don't have that screen anymore. My stock comes and goes, so we're going to be using a different screen, a smaller screen, but it is still outputting HD, so this test is going to be very similar to last week's. So with that said, let's get to benchmarking the card, and let's see how it does and if it's still valid in 2024. Let's do it. Okay, we are getting into the Shadow of the Tomb Raider benchmark here, and yeah, you can instantly see how much better this is doing than what the 750 Ti did. Already we are at around 50 to 60 FPS, so it's around 20 FPS more, and this is running at high graphics. This is set to HD high, so 1080p high, so it's not on ultra, but it is on high, and this is sort of what I believe a Series S experience would be like. Maybe the FPS would be a little bit better, but I just mean in terms of the visuals. So yeah, it's quite a decent start. Let's see how it does in the more open-ended testing. So again, around the 60s, which is quite acceptable. It's quite good, and it's very playable. So yeah, not exactly a high refresh rate experience, but definitely an acceptable experience, getting around just around 60 for the most part, sometimes jumping above it, but never really below it in these sort of tests. So yeah, again, I don't have Afterburner installed for these tests on this computer, on this test bench, and it is going out today, so I won't have it for much longer, so I don't really have time to install it. But yeah, just this FPS based benchmarking is okay for these sort of just graphical tests. In this one it's doing quite well, around 140. You can see the RAM is struggling to load everything in. There's meant to be backgrounds. There we go. It's starting to load in now. The RAM and the hard drive are a little bit slow. Only got 8 gigs of RAM. So yeah, you know, in terms of FPS numbers, it's quite good. Still getting around the 60s now. And for the most part, this bench has been around that 60 number. So for a computer like this, one that will cost about $300, I think this is quite a good experience, and you'll still be able to play, I believe, any modern game on this graphics card, because it is quite powerful still, if you're okay with lower FPS numbers in your games. So yeah, I mean, this is a AAA game, and we are getting a decent result. The average is around 60, so that's quite a good result. Okay, not bad on this one. Let's move on to the next one. Let's do it. Okay, getting into the Hitman benchmark, and this is again running at HD. This is running at ultra graphics. So right off the bat, quite a good result so far, running at around 50 to 80 FPS right now. Um, yeah, it's fluctuating wildly, but for the most part it is above 80. The average is at 71, and yeah, it looks nice. It looks really good. Um, so again, you know, this PC with this graphics card, this PC is going to cost you like $60 more than what it would cost if you just had like a 750 Ti. Now, I would recommend getting 16 gigs of RAM instead of just 8. But a PC like this with a nice chassis, and it's a smaller form factor PC, would run you about $350 if you bought like a new chassis and a big SSD and all of that kind of stuff. So for that price, you know, it's around the pricing of modern consoles, you know, the cheap ones. But a PC does offer a bit more, and while the gaming experience won't be the same, you can achieve more with a PC because you can, you know, I always say you can make money from a PC. So I still think a PC like this has a good application for games because we are still at around 65 frames per second average, and remember this is running at HD maximum graphics, including post-processing and screen image effects. So this is doing well, and also this is running from a hard drive. It isn't running from the SSD, so it's quite a good result. So for me, I think this is quite a decent result. Let's move on to the next one. Okay, this is the Far Cry New Dawn benchmark, and as you know, this is one that I like to do as well because it's a lot more of a modern game, and this is getting around 60 FPS average, which has been quite a theme for this PC so far. You know, that's magical 60 number has been quite relevant in all of our testing. This is running at HD ultra graphics as well, so it is running at the highest graphics. And you know, right now we are around 72 average FPS, so it's a good result so far. Uh, Usually we have like a big drop off in FPS there, but this one was a lot smoother, and I think that's because we have a little bit more VRAM in this card. So it's a short test, I can't say too much, but it's a nice looking game, and it's, you know, very playable on a system like this. You'll get around 65 average FPS, which is definitely playable. Okay, let's move on to the last one. Okay, Doom Eternal now. And as you can see, we are outside, which is a little bit more demanding. And it is getting around 70 to 100 FPS. And this is running at HD high graphics. So not ultra, but still high, which does look very nice. Especially on a smaller screen like this one. So this is a pretty good result. In an indoor situation now, we are getting about 90 FPS. So yeah, if I had to give this PC a name, it would be the 60 FPS PC, because in all of the games it's gotten around 60 FPS or more, which I think is quite a good result. Yeah, I would not recommend playing this from a hard drive like I am, because the hard drive is struggling a little bit. As you can see, it is a lot better to play from an SSD. There's a lot of lag spikes that won't happen if you do, and yeah, overall it's just going to be a better experience. But you know, this, once everything is loaded in, it's not too bad. It just takes a while to load in. So yeah, again, this computer has only 8 gigs of RAM and a GTX 970 4 gig. So yeah, it's a good result. I mean, this is a modern game. I think it came out in 2019, 2020. I'm not sure exactly, but around there. And you know, this card is what, like 10 years old at this point. So it's a good result, is what I'm getting at. And I think it's more than playable. Like, it's not a high refresh rate necessarily, but it is getting around like 100 FPS for the most part. So yeah, I definitely think it's a really good result. And a lot of fun. Now look, you won't be able to play games like The Last of Us or anything like that at like really good refresh rates. You'll probably only get like around like 40 FPS in a game like that. But you know, with games like those, I don't think it's expected for a PC like this to handle that kind of thing. But even in your God of Wars, Horizon Zero Dawn, Days Gone, you know, this will be able to play those games at probably around medium graphics. So yeah, I do think a PC like this has a lot of value for a big subset of the gaming population. Like I said in the previous video, there are still a lot of gamers that can't afford new hardware and can't afford the newest stuff. For a lot of people, getting something like this would be like their first PC, and to them it would be amazing to have a PC like this. So I do think there's a lot of value in computers like this in 2024. It depends on who you're marketing to. But you know, as I said in the previous video, not to be too much of a downer, but not everyone can afford computer gaming as a hobby, and it is becoming more expensive. So I think when you can find value in PCs like these, then you sometimes just have to go for that value, and you have to take those kinds of options. So yeah, I would say around 85 FPS average. It's a really good result. Let's discuss the computer. Let's do it. Okay, so that's it for the testing for the GTX 970 in 2024. And how did it do? Well, I think it performed relatively admirably. I think, as I said in the Doom Eternal gameplay, that this sort of thing still has a lot of value in specific parts of the market. Now, obviously, I'm not talking about, you know, the high-end market where people buy new graphics cards for hundreds of dollars. That's not what I'm talking about. But, you know, in countries like South Africa, there are a lot of people that still have use for things like these. And that's why I like to take a look at them and, you know, show people that even in this day and age, you can still play games on computers with these sorts of graphics cards in them. Now, look, you know, APUs coming out now are going to outperform this, but again, it comes down to a financial thing, and a lot of people can't afford those. So enough about that. Just based on pure performance, how did it do? Well, I'd say it got around 60 FPS in most of the tests, and in Doom Eternal it did a little bit better, getting around 85 average. So that's obviously a pretty good result because we ran everything at HD high graphics. So I think it performed quite well at the end of the day. Like I said, there are going to be games that you won't be able to play at high graphics, maybe some even at medium graphics, but there will be no game that you can't play at all, and most games you'll be able to put at high on HD. So it's a good result. I'm pretty happy with the card, and I think it performed quite well. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope to see you in the next one. Thanks for watching. Cheers.